As a dedicated Percy Jackson fan, the show has been such an interesting product to watch over the past few years. It's been so much fun to watch the stories that I grew up with finally get an adaptation that is actually like watchable. I also think that the renaissance of the Percy Jackson fandom has resulted in some very interesting things to observe, specifically around like the different camps that seem to be forming within it. And all of these camps are sort of forming now because of the show. This divide has led to a lot of different conversations around the nature of the show, whether it's an actually good adaptation or not, but also there is a lot of talk about the class divide within the fandom. Basically, the conversation is, who are the real fans? Who are the real Percy Jackson fans and who are pretending? Some people would go as far as saying that this show is actually ruining the fandom, and that people that, for example, aren't familiar with the source material, who haven't read the books prior to watching the show, have no place in it. Other people, let's just say, are more welcoming of others. This was very prevalent during the airing of season 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, but I think the conversations really ramped up around season 2 finally premiering. Season 2 is where all of those emotions just doubled in size because the show is much more divisive now. It introduced more changes to the original story, and suddenly you have people questioning the fan status of others just because they enjoy said changes, or going as far as to say that the films were better. No, they weren't. In this video, I want to talk about the second season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians and try to present my takes about some of the previously mentioned conversations. But specifically, I'm going to be focusing on book Purism and how it affects the fandom at large. Where does it come from? Why is it even a thing? And is it actually a good thing or not? Well, let's talk about it. Hello, my name is Freyr. I'm your favorite local forest gremlin and a Polish sociology student, and I want to welcome you to my little corner of the internet where I discuss all forms of popular media that interest me, whether that's books, TV shows, music, all of that and more. And in this video, I get to talk about the byproduct of something that actively formed my childhood. I have been a Percy Jackson fan for honestly more than a decade at this point, and it's crazy how that time has passed and how much I've matured since then. But to see, those stories that I remember reading when I was barely a teenager even, finally get these adaptations that are actually watchable is such a great feeling. And honestly, I'm so excited to talk about this season. Although I do hope that this video is going to be shorter than 2 hours, because the last time I talked about Percy Jackson on this channel.
So we moved to LA. My father gets a job at the Palm restaurant.
Well, but before I get into all of the yapping around Percy Jackson season 2, I would like to quickly remind you that you can subscribe to my channel. Most of you watching are not subscribed, which is pretty rude in my opinion. You can also comment down below. You can share this video around with your friends. You can like it, you can hype it, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media. Those include Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Letterboxd, plethora of others. Also, this video goes up on my birthday, so please don't be mean to me in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Honestly, getting 3K subscribers would be a great birthday gift. Thanks in advance, I guess. I don't know. This video comes from a place of view of someone who enjoys all Riordanverse media. I have really enjoyed the show since it came out, and I've only liked it more the more time passes. I will try my best to remove my biases towards the show in certain sections that require that, but also at the same time, this video is for the purposes of me presenting my own takes and my own opinions, so just trigger warning for opinions, I guess. Also, of course, spoiler alert is in effect for the entirety of this video about the second season of the show, the first season of the show, the first 2 books of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and honestly, probably even more books from the Riordanverse universe, because they will get mentioned here and there, specifically the Titan's Curse and, weirdly enough, the Court of the Dead. So just watch out for that if you haven't read those. So what is the plan for today? Firstly, I'm going to recap both the book and the show, as I do think it is important that we're all on the same page in this video by the time we get to the more open to discussion part. This will also include my in-depth review of all of the episodes in season 2. Then I'm gonna talk about the changes that the show introduced to the original story, whether I like them or not, and what they did for the story at large. And then probably the most important section, the book purism of it all. We're gonna talk about the sociological factors behind it, how it affects the fandom spaces and the enjoyment of a piece of media, how it affects the concept of adaptation, and whether it's actually a good thing or not. All of that. In the end, I'm gonna quickly close things off by talking about what I think the future of the show is going to be. What does the future have in store for Percy Jackson and the Olympians? Well, we're gonna find out pretty soon, I think, because season 3 comes out this year, which is, oh my god, that is so crazy. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin with the book. So, quick disclaimer, I don't want to really make this section too opinionated because I do have a video coming out next week after this one, which is going to be my ranking of every single Riordanverse book, every single one of them. So I want to take a look at most of the action, the plot of the Sea of Monsters, not necessarily whether it's a well-written book. If you want opinions, go to that video in a week's time, of course. The plot of the Sea of Monsters revolves around the quest for the Golden Fleece, which is necessary to save Camp Half-Blood because the Folia tree has been poisoned and said fleece has magical healing properties. Said tree used to be a girl named Folia who was dying after she took all the monsters on herself to save her companions at the border of the camp. Zeus turned her into a tree, and now the protective barrier around camp is connected to that tree. The poisoning of the tree and also Chiron's connection to Kronos leads to him being replaced by Tantalus, who very clearly doesn't give two shits about camp. However, he does give out a quest to journey for the Golden Fleece to Clarisse. Percy is kind of pissed because he's the one who had the coordinates of the Golden Fleece and he also wants to save Grover from Polyphemus' island. Him, Annabeth, and Tyson end up running away from camp in order to also venture into the Sea of Monsters. First, they encounter Princess Andromeda, which is Kronos' ship, where they learn that Luke is also searching for the fleece because it can help to bring Kronos back. Our main heroes continue their journey after escaping Princess Andromeda into the Sea of Monsters, and on their way there, they kill a Hydra and also encounter Clarisse. On her ship, they pass through Scylla and Charybdis, but at that point, Clarisse's ship explodes. Only Percy and Annabeth survive, the rest are presumed dead for a big chunk of the book. They make their way through Circe's island, the Sirens, and finally they make it to the island of Polyphemus. Turns out that the Cyclops is holding both Clarisse and Grover hostage. They manage to retrieve the fleece and rescue Clarisse and Grover, but Annabeth gets hurt and has to be healed using the fleece. Also, during that scene, Tyson kinda comes back and also saves the day. We love Tyson. They leave the Sea of Monsters using hippocampi. I still haven't learned how to properly pronounce that. It's much easier in Polish for some reason. I don't know, because it's in Polish, the word is hippocampi, I believe, or okay, maybe it's not easy. Okay, I'm just gonna shut up at this point. But yeah, they leave the Sea of Monsters on the fish horses and they send Clarisse to the camp on a plane to deliver the fleece, and right when she leaves, Luke attacks. Chiron and the party ponies save the day and then transport our heroes to Camp Half-Blood. They get there in the perfect moment because the tree of Thalia gets healed a little bit too much because it also brings back Thalia to life. She escapes the tree and now she's alive. She's alive and well. Now, for the character arcs, I think the first one that really comes to mind when I think of the Sea of Monsters is specifically Percy and Tyson and their relationship to each other. That is probably the most important arc in the Sea of Monsters, I would personally say. Percy is very conflicted about having a Cyclops as a brother. He, at some points, even thinks that it's some kind of cruel joke that Poseidon is playing on him. He ends up accepting Tyson as his brother, and it's a really, really wholesome arc. He's also faced with grief because he thinks that Tyson died during the explosion. I love their siblinghood, actually. It's such a cute relationship. And I also love that this book, kind of shows you that not all monsters are, in fact, monsters. Which is something that, weirdly enough, the Court of the Dead does. The main foe is, of course, Polyphemus, who is also a Cyclops, but he's nothing like Tyson. And I think it's interesting to think about this specific concept when we get a book that heavily relies on this exact concept later on in the timeline, that being the Court of the Dead, which is, I think, our most recent addition to the Riordanverse book canon. Annabeth also gets to do a little bit more in this book. The entire siren scene shows a lot of her character, her motivations, her aspirations. It lets the reader to get to know her more and understand what she does and how she does it a little bit more too. There's also a lot of talk about her past specifically in relationship to Luke and Folia and how she still believes that Luke can be saved. She wants her family back together. I mean, this is what the siren scene specifically shows us. A more minor arc in this book belongs to Clarice, and it revolves around the expectations of her father, Ares, but also her loyalty to camp. She wants to be the hero, but she is also very afraid of failure and of her father's anger. She tries to put on this like facade of anger, but you can tell there are more emotions that she's desperately just doesn't want to show. And that is because if she does, she's not fully well equipped to handle them. As I said before, I am gonna hold off on giving you my full opinions about the Sea of Monsters book because, again, a video coming out next week. Make sure to be seated for that. However, as Riordanverse books go, I'm just gonna keep it quick. I don't think the Sea of Monsters is really that good. It's like the definition of mid when you look at the Riordanverse books. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just not saying it's like the top of the pack either. Like, it's fine. It definitely has a few problems, and I think the major one, specifically in the context of the show, is the pacing of that book. There are very, very few moments where we actually get to sit down with our characters, talk about feelings, learn more about them. Everything is just so full packed with action. I don't think this book has a good balance of action and actually getting to know the characters. You know, we are constantly fighting some big monster, but ultimately we don't learn much about these characters aside from like the siren scene, or maybe, I don't know, after Tyson's death, you know, like that's literally the only moments really we get for these characters to talk about anything that doesn't like involve them actually like fighting for their lives. This is something that I do think that the show very much fixes, but again, there is a separate section for the changes that the show makes. So we're gonna put a pin in this and we're gonna come back to this later. But since I'm already starting to talk about the show, I might as well start talking about the episodes. This season, just like season 1, had 8 episodes, and I want to briefly talk about all of them. I'm going to recap them, and I'm also going to give you my thoughts about them, which ones I liked, which ones I maybe didn't like as much, although I pretty much liked all of them, so there's not gonna be much negativity in this section. Episode 1 is titled, I Play Dodgeball with Cannibals. We see Percy in his apartment with Tyson, a homeless classmate, whom Sally recognized as a Cyclops and decided to take care of. That is because she is incredible and she is the best person to ever exist. Percy dreams of Grover being captured after being cornered by demigods allied with Luke. As they walk to school, Percy and Tyson are picked up by the Grey sisters, Taxi and Annabeth, who warns them that the camp is in danger. They are attacked by 3 Laestrygonians. Clarice kills one of them, and as our heroes make their way into camp, they see Luke stabbing Folia's tree with a poison blade to kill the tree. Poseidon then claims Tyson, leaving Percy surprised, shocked, gobsmacked. Percy and Annabeth request a quest. I could have worded that better. They request a quest to save the tree, but are denied by Mr. D and Tantalus. Through an empathy link with Grover, Percy learns that Grover is imprisoned by the Cyclops named Polyphemus, and that the Golden Fleece, which can heal anything, is on said island. Using coordinates from Grover and the Grey Sisters, Percy decides to seek the fleece to save the tree, but he doesn't have a quest yet. This episode is a lot of fun. Honestly, just from like this episode alone, you can tell that a lot of the criticisms from season 1 have been listened to, have been heard, and have been applied to the show. Specifically the color grading. Season 1 is just so like gray and like muted when compared to season 2, which is so much more vibrant. It genuinely feels like a fantasy show now. The dialogue also doesn't feel forced. Immediately we get some like insane dialogue moments from these characters, specifically in the Grey Taxi scene where Annabeth and Percy are like kind of awkward because the Grey Sisters call Percy like Annabeth's boyfriend or something. That is so good. The acting, I mean, it gets really, really good this season. Just as a side quest, I went and rewatched the last episode of season 1 and immediately pressed play on episode 1 of season 2 afterwards. And I can tell you, the changes are drastic actually. But let's move on to episode 2, which is called Demon Pigeons Attack. Annabeth contacts Chiron, who warns her that Percy cannot quest for the fleece because of the great prophecy, and he also reveals said prophecy to her. Tantalus organizes a chariot race in which a few cabins take place. Annabeth plans to sabotage Percy and tells him that by not working together, they are going to double their chances of winning. But the entire race gets interrupted because the Stymphalian birds attack, and Annabeth, Percy, and Tyson scare them off using Emotions by Mariah Carey. This scene is probably like one of the most Percy Jackson coded things I've seen in a while. Like, this was so hilarious. With the barrier set to fail within a week, Tantalus assigns Clarice a quest for the fleece, and she selects Annabeth and Chris, even though it's implied that she would have picked Percy had Annabeth not intervened. That makes Percy feel very betrayed, understandably so, and he decides to flee from camp and asks Poseidon for his blessing to, go on this journey, go on this quest. Hermes appears with permission from Poseidon, and he also gives him a wind thermos and special vitamins and delivers one of the most iconic lines of the entire season. That, of course, being, what happens in Vegas is the reason for half the kids in Hermes' cabin.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
What happens in Vegas is the reason for half the kids in Hermes' cabin.
Like, I'm sorry, that was insane. The first time I saw that, I was on the floor. I was like, what the hell? Who wrote that line? And can I like shake their hand? Can I congratulate them? Can I tell them how much they mean to me? Like, oh my God. Annabeth and Percy have a conversation at the beach in which Percy kind of airs all his feelings towards Annabeth and the fact that she hasn't tried to contact him in a while. Then him, Annabeth, and Tyson go on the little like floaty boat, and Tantalus attempts to shoot them. First, Tyson stops him, and then Percy uses his sword to protect the crew from another one of the arrows, and Tantalus throws a little pissy fit on the beach because he didn't kill someone. Girl, get this man into an asylum like now. This episode is crazy, honestly. The tension it introduces, the drama, Annabeth trying to kick Percy off the quest because of what Chiron told her is crazy, but also shows how much she cares for her little seaweed brain. There are Percybeth crumbs wherever you look this season. Everywhere. That adds so much depth to her character and introduces conflict that actually, when you really think about it, it makes sense. I hate forced conflict, but this is 100% logical behavior from Annabeth. She is trying to protect her friend. This episode also shows us more of Tyson's backstory. His line about being able to sleep, meaning that it's safe. I'm sorry, like I don't really cry that much, which some of you might find it hard to believe, but this season I cried several times, and that was one of the moments. Honestly, Tyson is probably the reason for like 90% of all of my cries that happened whilst I was watching the show. We see his scars as well. He doesn't actually say much, but the way he says these few words, that combined with the scars, God's, like, he needs to be protected. He needs to be cherished. He needs to be loved. This entire season, honestly, I was feeling like a lot of paternal instincts towards Tyson specifically. I always liked him in the books, but this version of him, like, that is my son. He is so precious and I love him. And also, I think Daniel was the perfect actor to portray Tyson. And honestly, his performance is one of my highlights of the entire season. It's actually so phenomenal. Episode 3 is titled We Board Princess Andromeda. Clarice consults the Oracle and beheads her at the top of this episode. That was so funny. The Oracle shows her a version of herself and delivers the prophecy, which the meanings here are like insane, honestly. Ares equips her with a warship and an undead army and tells her to find the police before Percy, or else. Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson get on the Princess Andromeda, where Percy and Annabeth meet Allison, who Annabeth recognizes. Turns out she is an ally of Luke, and she attacks them, and she later falls overboard during the fight, which is honestly a pretty hilarious scene. Like, her fall and how she's just like doing these like, I don't know, like flips while she's falling. I don't know. It shouldn't have been funny to me, but it kind of was. Captured by Luke while Tyson is taken below, Percy and Annabeth are shown Kronos and his coffin, and this is where also Luke explains that the fleece could heal Kronos. Luke claims Percy's support would bring Kronos back immediately and would prevent a war that would destroy the world. But in the meantime, Tyson causes an explosion, which he is kind of an expert in, and thanks to that, the trio is able to escape. Clarisse later learns that Tantalus gave her false coordinates for the Sea of Monsters and that she will in fact need Percy if she wants to get in there. She also finally manages to command her crew and grows attached to them as a result. Annabeth tells Percy about the Great Prophecy at the ending of this episode, and Percy is left shocked. Something I'm gonna talk a little bit more about in the later sections of this video is specifically Clarisse and her character, because I love the way that the show handles her. I love how multi-dimensional she is in this show. Clarisse getting her flowers is so good. In the books, I'm gonna be honest, I never really liked her, and I don't think many people did. I think you only start to like Clarisse around like book 4, book 5, because that's where she actually like gets to shine and not be like an active asshole. We get crumbs here and there, but her story in this show specifically, when compared to the book, it's so much better because we actually get to see what she feels, what she's going through. Her interaction with Ares, how she tries to get the crew to listen, what she promises them, like book Clarisse could never. The things these writers do with the Luke, Annabeth, and Percy relationship is so good. And there's so much to unpack there from every single angle, from every single perspective. So many conflicting feelings, thoughts, doubts. I love that the show actually gives us more of these conflicts the more we go into the season. Like the psychological portraits of these characters are so full, so like perfectly crafted. It's everything. This is also where I started to notice how great the sets for the season were, because I'm sorry, Princess Andromeda, that set and that entire thing is so gorgeous. It's so nice looking. The set designs this season specifically are crazy. They're so good. Episode 4 is titled Clarisse Blows Up Everything. This episode starts with a flashback of Annabeth, Luke, and Thalia meeting Grover for the first time. It's a great scene. Too bad that the lighting in it is non-existent, therefore I didn't see shit. After Annabeth is kidnapped by Cyclopses and rescued by Thalia, they decide to go to the Camp Half-Blood for Annabeth's safety, despite the fact that Thalia and Luke both kind of don't want to go. We also see the sacrifice of Thalia, who stays to fight the Furies to give her companions a chance to make it to camp. Percy, Tyson, and Annabeth get ambushed by Clarisse and her crew. Percy challenges Clarisse to a duel to decide who goes to the Sea of Monsters. Meanwhile, Annabeth kills 3 essential crew members, forcing Clarisse to take them. She's a smart gal. Annabeth convinces Clarisse to face Scylla and sacrifice 6 crew members to enter the Sea of Monsters. They begin the first trial with Scylla taking 3 men when Clarisse changes course to face Charybdis. While Clarisse attacks Charybdis, Percy tries to change course by controlling water in like the whirlpool thing, but the thermos opens completely and destroys the ironclad with them inside all of that cyclone. It's a very epic scene. This episode is great, and I think this is where all of the comparisons with the book, specifically around the pacing of the story, really start to show. The conversations we see take place this season would never happen in the books, because the books they don't allow us to have that much time with the characters, like one-on-one. You have Clarisse and Percy talking about the prophecies. You have their argument next to Annabeth. You have Percy and Tyson talking. Percy says to Annabeth that it only took him 2 days to learn how special she is. Like, it's great food. The ending of this episode too is just traumatic. I'm sorry. I was so gobsmacked by that ending. Episode 5 is titled We Check Into Cece's Spa and Resort. Percy and Annabeth wake up at Circe's spa, where they learn that Tyson and Clarisse are possibly dead. Percy has a quick little breakdown, understandably so, and they also get greeted by Hilla. You don't understand how gagged I was when this woman came onto my screen and said, "Hello, I am Hilla. Welcome to Cece's Spa and Resort." I was like, I'm sorry, come again? Like, what did you say your name was? Is there little Reina running around the set somewhere? Like, is there, I don't know. I have rewatched that episode since, but I don't think I noticed any like person that could potentially be Reina? If there is, please let me know, because I was so surprised. They learn that they must survive the sirens in order to leave, and they also see a guy try and pass them and fail. In the meantime, Clarice awakens on the shore of an island and reunites with Grover after Polyphemus captures her. Grover convinces her to escape another way, but forgets his disguise when Polyphemus returns. Percy learns from Cersei that his fatal flaw is his loyalty to his friends, which can endanger him and also the entire world, really. He decides that Annabeth should continue the quest alone because he could hinder the mission. Percy then later confronts Cersei about helping a few heroes with beeswax and that her training is a sham, so Cersei turns him into a guinea pig. We stand vanilla in this household, we really do. Polyphemus deceives Clarice with the voice of Grover and also captures her. Annabeth finds Percy and transforms him and the other guinea pigs into humans with vitamins, and then they also try to leave for the sirens with the beeswax that they have now stolen from Cersei, but Cersei uses her magic tricks and she steals it back. Annabeth has to face the sirens by herself because Percy is tied to the mast, and she survives them with the help of her mother, Athena. But it turns out that that is also an illusion caused by the sirens, and Percy rescues her and they leave, arriving at Polyphemus's island. I do think there might be like critique specifically towards the changes here, but still, I personally really enjoyed it. The way they explain Cersei is so good and adds dimension. She's not just some witch, she has very clear motivation, and it all comes from her delusion and fear of being alone. That siren scene gagged everyone who was watching. Like, I'm so sorry. Athena coming to save Annabeth, I was like, oh my god, yes, Athena, she's so good. By the way, I love the actress who portrays Athena. She's so good. And then the writers pull a fast one on us, and turns out that is not really Athena. It's the call the ambulance but not for me kind of situation, but like turned into like a moment in the show. I was so gobsmacked by that. Crazy shit. Like, actually hats off to whoever wrote that scene, because I think everybody collectively was just shocked at how insane that twist was. Genuinely give these writers their tens. They know what the fuck they're doing this season. Episode 6 is titled Nobody Gets the Fleece. Percy had a dream of Thalia destroying camp before he and Annabeth disguised themselves as sheep to pass Polyphemus. Luke sent Annabeth an iris message warning her about Polyphemus, and as a result also learns her location and teleports to the island. Can somebody explain to me how that teleportation thing works? Because I still have no clue. It still hasn't been explained, and I believe I complained about it in my season 1 video that I did like a couple of months back. I do think I did, because like, how does that work? Is that like a Hermes power? Is that a Cronus power? How does he... What's the deal with that? As Percy descends into the cave to rescue Grover and Clarice, he is trapped there by Polyphemus, and Annabeth discovers the fleece is a fake. Invisible, Annabeth distracts Polyphemus by reminding him of how Odysseus once tricked him and also blinded him. After Grover finds the real fleece, Polyphemus returns and knocks Annabeth unconscious. Tyson arrives and fights Polyphemus whilst Luke finds Annabeth is dying. Percy offers Luke the fleece in order to heal her, and Luke does so, but also takes both Annabeth and the fleece to the Princess Andromeda. Tyson then frees Percy, Grover, and Clarice and summons 4 hippocampi, okay, maybe now I pronounced it well, to rescue Annabeth and recover the fleece. I think that this is the episode when it comes to the acting performances from this cast specifically, because they are insane. Walker Scobell in this episode is so good. Like, I need to give my 10s when the 10s are due.
Give her her 10s. Give her what she's... That's one thing about me. I give 10s where 10s are due. I tell if you look crazy.
That delivery of "don't touch her" genuinely, like, chills. Full body chills. I was like, oh my god, he's about to kill someone. And it only makes me wonder, like, how is this kid going to survive season 3? Percy's reunion with Tyson is also just so sweet, and the emotions in it are just like... I don't know, it feels real. It really does feel real. Episode 7 is titled I Go Down with the Ship. We see the aftermath of Zeus turning Thalia into a tree, and Luke is very pissed. understandably so. Our heroes kidnap a kid of Aphrodite in order to get onto Princess Andromeda. That scene is very hilarious because, first of all, this guy immediately catches on to Percy, which is great. And also Charm Speak gets mentioned. Charm Speak mentioned in season 2 is crazy. I love fan service. I love fan service because I feel served when that happens. I was so like, Charm Speak mentioned. Percy and Clarice want to do different things though. Percy very clearly prioritizes Annabeth, whilst Clarice's priority is the fleece. Luke places the fleece on Kronos' sarcophagus, and Percy finds Annabeth but becomes invisible when Luke arrives using her invisibility cap. Annabeth tries to convince Luke that the fleece could bring Thalia back, which clearly affects him. It makes him spiral. Kronos orders Alicent to kill Annabeth, but she gets defeated by Clarice. Percy finds the fleece and Kronos unsuccessfully tries to persuade him to not take it. Luke finds Percy and they also fight. Percy escapes but is stabbed by Luke and then later healed by the fleece. That scene is so dramatic because watching that, I remember thinking like, I know how this story ends. I've read the books. I know exactly what's going to happen, but seeing that made me genuinely worried for Percy. I know he's going to make it out alive out of this, but man, I was so gagged. But I also love that we're immediately presenting the power of the fleece like this. That was kind of a fun move from the writers, really. And also the edits of that specific moment to Purple Rain by Prince. Y'all are evil.
I am done with Taylor Swift. Yup. I was a Swiftie. I was down.
Percy sends Clarice to camp with the fleece on the back of the Pegasus named Blackjack, who is of course a gay icon.
Fuck out my way when you see me. I'm rolling with the LGBT.
Sally takes Percy and the group to the camp, with Percy troubled by his vision of Thalia killing everyone there. Kronos orders Luke to kill Percy. This episode I love, the action in it and how much we see of Luke too. I think this was the Luke episode of the season. You literally see the thought process that he goes through after he finds out about the possibility of Thalia being alive, and also his loyalty to Kronos and how Kronos basically tortures him. His micro expressions, this whole cast loves micro expressions, and I love them for that specifically. I also loved Sally Jackson in this episode. She is the MVP of the show for me. Whenever she shows up, I'm happy. I loved her responding to the call from Grover and Tyson in the shop and talking about demigods out loud, and then the camera pans to the cashier lady and she's like, I'm sorry, what was she talking about? But also this woman works in customer service. I'm sure she's heard wilder things. Also the fact that Sally arrives in a Toyota Prius. Book fans knew exactly what this was referring to, and I was gagged. I love that we're already hinting at her. Oh my, okay. Oh yeah. I love that. Also, when Percy is walking up to her and is realizing that it's his mom and he covers the wound, these writers know what they're doing. Episode 8 is titled "The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well." All too well, even. We learned that Clarice was attacked while the Lystrigonians breached the barrier. They also killed Tantalus, which we support. Percy overhears Luke's plan to free Thalia so she can destroy Olympus. Chris Rodriguez betrays Clarice, who is later rescued by Annabeth and Grover. That whole scene, I just felt so sorry for Clarice. My girl went through so much this season, and then also the shit that Chris says to her, I would never recover, really. I think it would stick with me for a while. Annabeth is later shot by Alicent, but Clarice manages to get the fleece to Thalia's tree, where she revives and unleashes thunder that hits Percy and knocks both of them unconscious. Percy encounters Poseidon in a dream, who warns him about a coming war and also asks Tyson to come to the underwater forges because he needs his help. And is also stunting on everybody because that coat, that man walked right off a Versace fashion show before appearing there. I'm sorry, who wears coats like these? Actually, don't answer that question. I love that styling choice for Poseidon. I love that he randomly decided to be like cunt in the show. He was like, let me do it for the girls and the gays. In that scene, we also see Tyson deliver one of the best lines of the entire season when he tells Percy that he prayed to the gods to be sent a friend, and he was sent a brother instead.
Yeah.
After Percy awakens, Chiron reveals that the Furies didn't kill Thalia, but instead delivered a message about the great prophecy from Hades. Zeus killed the Furies and transformed Thalia into the tree when she decided that she doesn't want to be his weapon. Chiron says that Kronos planned to bring Thalia back, hoping to use her as his champion, and Thalia awakens and also reunites with Annabeth whilst Percy watches. This whole episode ends with one of the wildest lines I've ever heard, because Percy deadass says that his nightmare just woke up. And then we see the post-credit scene in which at Circe's spa, Percy and Annabeth are honored for passing the sirens with like the statues, because that's what Circe would do for the few people who managed to pass the sirens to like keep up the myth that it's possible. That ending was so funny. This episode is everything to me, and it's also one of my favorite episodes of the season. I think the final battle though was partially pretty underwhelming. Like, the fighting itself was amazing, and I love specifically the fights between Luke and Percy, because Luke is so aggressive in it, but like also it reflects their fighting styles so well. Luke is very aggressive and very clearly more experienced than Percy. Percy is just like flinging that thing around and trying to hit him, but like clearly he doesn't have the experience in order to be like actually, you know, considered a swordsman. And then Luke beats the shit out of him. However, the rest of the fighting is like scattered around camp in like weird places sometimes, and like I don't know. Also, maybe if there were like more monsters other than the Lystrigonians, it would have been slightly more like threatening, because you just have these like couple like hairy dudes standing at the border being like, look, let us in. Like, okay. And what's that gonna change? Although I do also have to say Allison in this fight was a menace. The wake up scene of Thalia was also epic, and the flashback with Zeus actually made my blood boil. But more on that specifically in a moment. I think my ranking of the episodes would be as follows. I think episode 3 is my least favorite. Episode 7 goes right above it. Episode 2, then episode 6, episode 1, episode 8, episode 5, and episode 4 is my favorite episode of the season. I think this season was very consistent, but also just overall much better than season 1. The cinematography was stronger. The visuals and shots we got this season were actually insane. Like, this is cinema. The ending of episode 4 specifically is going to be my highlight for the show. I'm sorry, that was insane. Insane. The acting this season was also just incredible. I need them to sweep every possible award show they can. This cast went to the School of Micro Expressions and graduated with flying colors. The script is much better. I think in season 1 we had moments where I think some of the dialogue seemed a little bit forced. It didn't really seem that natural. Everything in season 2 though flows so well. This season was such a wild ride, and it was so exciting, partially thanks to the changes that were made to the plot of the story. Coincidentally enough, that is our next section.
How I look? Beautiful.
There was a lot of changes this season, and I want to focus on the ones that had the most impact on the actual plot, or the ones that I saw the most people like talk about or complain about. So if I miss any, and there are probably some that I did miss, let me know in the comments below which ones I missed, and maybe I'm gonna like tell you what I thought about them. I don't know. Also, tell me what you thought about all of these changes. Let's do that. Okay, let's start, because I have a lot of these. No dodgeball in episode 1. Didn't care. I understand why it wasn't included specifically. The timing in the show seems to be quite important. They cannot waste time on scenes that don't bring much. Although, I do kind of wish we got to see more of Percy and Tyson in school. I think you could set some pretty interesting plot lines with that, specifically around Tyson's past, but also Percy's protectiveness over him. I think the bullies could have been featured. The dodgeball thing though, I think the CGI could be a problem, but still, I don't really care. Also, it kind of is in the show. It's just not in like the school. It happens because they are literally like dodging fireballs from the Lystrigonians. So technically, they do play dodgeball, just like in a different setting. So like, I know, I didn't really understand the upset over that one. The second change I have written down is Percy knowing that Tyson is a Cyclops. I actually really like this change. I like that Percy is actually able to see through the mist now more clearly, and that he doesn't have these like preconceived notions about what Cyclopses are prior to the plot of the Sea of Monsters. And he doesn't have them because he's been living with one. I also love the concept of Sally basically adopting Tyson. Like, I really do. And like, I love Sally Jackson. I love Sally Jackson. The people yearn for more Sally Jackson. I want a show just about her because I think there's so much to her character. There's so much there. I love Sally Jackson. She's the best mom in a fictional media. Period. Annabeth tries to kick Percy off the quest. This is really good. I already sort of like talked about it when recapping the episodes, but this adds so much more to their relationship because you have Percy being mad at Annabeth when she tries to protect him, but then he slowly starts to understand that maybe she had a point and he should have listened to her. I also love that they care so much about each other already. I don't think their bond was this strong at this point in the story in the books. It was strong, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like this. When it comes to the minor foes or characters, there's no Hydra or Colchis Bulls in this show, and personally, I didn't notice that. I didn't notice these changes until somebody pointed that out online. I was like, oh wait, actually yeah, they weren't there. But also like, I don't really care. It was cut for timing, and I get why. Specifically, the Hydra scene doesn't add much to the story. It's kind of a filler fight when you really think about it. And the only purpose of like the Colchis Bulls was to establish Tyson as a fireproof person again after the dodgeball fight in the school, and also to reveal him as a Cyclops, which by that point in the story, in the show, we already know he's a Cyclops, and so does Percy. So both are kind of like completely unnecessary when you think about it. Martha and George, though, I am kind of mourning their loss because I did kind of hope to see them when Hermes appears, but hopefully they appear in the future. Rainbow doesn't show up immediately. That's another change. And girl, the people who were talking about this were so annoying. This was so just like such a small little detail to fixate on. It literally does not matter at all. And he also fucking appears later on. So what's the point of all this bitching and moaning now? You'll just look annoying. The next change, and this one I have actually a whole page of notes about, and that is Allison and her basically existing. This is a very interesting one because on one hand, I really love it, but on the other, I also have some doubts about it. And I think season 3 has a lot to do when it comes to fixing Allison and like making her a more fleshed out character. I have sort of conflicting feelings about Allison. On one hand, I do like her a lot. Like, first of all, she is a godly sister of mine. I am and always will be a kid of Apollo. That is my godly parent. I have been a part of Cabin 7 since I can remember. For that reason, I am slightly biased because I do like kids of Apollo who are like able to kick ass. But also, it does make me wonder, like, what did Apollo do to her? Or maybe a better question, what didn't he do that she's like so mad at him? Because like, as far as godly parents go, I think Apollo is a pretty good one to have. Like, you could have Zeus. That could happen. So like, I prefer Apollo personally, but I don't know. And that's kind of the problem. I don't know what happened. I don't know what their relationship is. But back to Allison, I like that she is an adult demigod who joins Kronos. I like how relentless she is. I love how dedicated to the cause she is. Her fighting style is so badass. It makes you almost wonder why she is like not the leader of Kronos' army, since Luke is just like, he hesitates a lot, specifically this season, until like episode 8, and he has to be tortured by Kronos in order to not hesitate, really. Meanwhile, Allison, Kronos tells her to kill Annabeth, and she's like, okay, on it. I kind of think she would have been a better leader, but like, of course, Luke has to be the one, you know. I kind of think that her inclusion in this story was almost necessary, unlike most people who don't like her presence in the show. You have this army of Kronos in which most of the members are practically NPCs. We have a few names, but they really start to like come into play a little bit later in the story. You know, you have Ethan Nakamura, you have Kelly, but all of them like sort of start to play a bigger role in the Battle of the Labyrinth book. So like, aside from Luke, we don't really know many of the members of the Kronos army, and none of them really matter that much in the long run. It's good to see actual characters in the army aside from Luke and how they approach the cause that they are serving. I think it brings more nuance to the army. It also offers other points of view for the characters. I like her contraposition against Luke specifically in how, as I said before, he hesitates a lot, but she doesn't. But also there are so many problems with Alicent that have yet to be fixed. These episodes are short as hell, and thus there's not much room to build up her character. We have no idea what her story is. We have no idea what her motivation is. We know her personality, we know her loyalty, we know her skills, but we don't know where she comes from and why she does what she does. And if you're introducing a new character to your story, especially one of such prominence throughout the season, I would like to know something about them other than what they do in the season. Tell me where she comes from, how she joined Kronos, why she did that, why is she so loyal to Kronos. She's pretty well woven into the story, but she lacks roots for me to be able to fully understand her motivation, and I think her psychological portrait as a character is incomplete. However, I do also have hopes for Alicent in season 3 because we know that she's going to be a returning character, and we know that season 3, it's going to be adapting the Titan's Curse, and the Titan's Curse is the book where we first meet Apollo. So maybe there's gonna be something. Maybe he's gonna talk about Alicent. Maybe we're gonna learn something about her from her godly parents. Maybe that's what's going to happen. I am kind of hoping for that. Actually, that would be very, very cool to see Apollo do something more than just care about Artemis, which that in of itself, I think it's going to be incredible to see, the sibling gods work together and kind of their relationship with each other. But I also am really, really curious to see if they actually do tackle the character of Alicent when writing the character of Apollo. So yeah, to summarize, I do like Alicent, but I wish I could understand her more. I think a lot of her anger and aggressiveness just feels very, maybe not out of place, but unprecedented. Why does she hate Annabeth so much specifically? Why is she trying to destroy camp? I really want to know more about Alicent. The other major character change that I want to talk about is the handling of Clarisse. She gets so much to do in this show when compared to the books, so much more. And I gotta be honest, I'm a fan of every single thing they do with her. We see her fear of her father, of failure, but also her loyalty to her crew, to the camp. She wants to do good, but she is also prideful and full of contradictions. She can be egotistical, she can be rude, but all of that is an act. It's a mask that hides a very insecure person who seeks approval. She wants to be seen as a hero, but right now she feels like she's unimportant. That's part of the reason for her rivalry with Percy. He arrives to camp and immediately, he's claimed by Poseidon. He goes on a quest. He's this big ass hero. And now he intervenes into her quest. I very much understand why she's so frustrated with him. She puts on this prideful attitude to hide her insecurities. And you can see that when she drops that facade, for example, in episode 7, when Percy gives her the fleece, that mask isn't the real Clarisse. It's the Clarisse that everyone expects to see. She fears, she has doubts, and she's not just an egotistical kid of Ares. There's so much more to her. She actually cares so much about others, but hides it because it seems like an act of being vulnerable. For example, when she tries to save her crew from Scylla and cannot withstand the sight of them being killed, that's a good example of that. Her priority is to the mission, whilst Percy's is Annabeth. But it's not like Clarisse wouldn't care about Annabeth either. She states that she wouldn't, but let's be honest, she would care. We see glimpses of that very complex inner life of Clarisse in the books, but it never reaches that level. This show made me a fan of Clarisse. Finally, I understand all of her motivations. I understand everything that happens inside of her head. I am a fan. This show created a new Clarisse. And dare I say, it created the better Clarisse. Another change was made to Cersei and to the Sirens. I actually think that the connection between Cersei and the Sirens is a very smart way of giving, characters that were never really that well developed in the books more to work with in the show. The Sirens in the books are just the Sirens, they're just the Sirens. And Cersei is a man-hating witch. which valid. But in this show, Cersei is actually surprisingly friendly. Like at first, I was actually so confused about her and the entirety of like the setup of Cece's spawn result. I don't know. I felt like I would be able to pick up on like the fakeness of Cersei quicker. But that just didn't happen. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh my God, wait, this is actually kind of genius. Cersei uses the sirens to keep guests at her spa and promises them like this course of training to be able to pass the sirens. Sometimes she lets someone leave to keep up the feeling of possibility in her guests that they can also do it one day, that it is achievable. She does all of that because she fears to be alone. She cannot leave this island, and that fear and that delusion of this paradise she built, that's all that's driving her and giving her a purpose. She cannot just stop. She's gaslighting these people out of fear. Is she a good person? No, of course not. Does she need therapy? Yeah, definitely. But is it a way more intricate and deep look at Cersei and her psyche? Yes.
Yes.
I also love that the sirens are almost like a tool, but also like that Annabeth having to face them doesn't come from Annabeth herself. I'm sorry. This is my little pet peeve with the book specifically because I never really understood why that scene happened the way that it did in the books. And maybe I'm just dumb and I'm like misunderstanding something. But personally, I thought that was kind of dumb. I think Annabeth tying herself to the mast in order to hear what the sirens have to say was stupid as hell and honestly kind of out of character for her. She's reportedly the daughter of the goddess of wisdom, but that personally I saw as a sign of idiocy. I much rather would have her face the visions of the sirens without planning to do so. I think it adds to the stakes of the situation. Meanwhile, in the books, it just kind of seemed confusing. I think some of you will disagree with me on that. I really, really do, because that scene has a lot of fans, but I like the way that the sirens work in this show. First of all, they are horrifying, but also I love how they use the fatal flaw of Annabeth against her. She thinks she outsmarted them, and they let her think that. Her pride, but most importantly, her desire to be loved, blinds her, and the sirens see that very clearly. I think it's way more interesting this way, now that it's an accident. And also, like, what was Annabeth ever going to learn from the sirens? Like, I never understood that as a concept. Like, what do they have to tell you? What could you possibly learn from them? I just thought it was kind of stupid. And like, speaking of the sirens specifically, the next change I have written down is the treatment of the fatal flaws. I'm gonna be honest, I never truly understood the big deal with the fatal flaws in the books. I mean, okay, I did understand it, I think, but they also like didn't come into play that much. Also, sometimes it kind of felt like an exaggeration of the topic. Sometimes when they would talk about them in the books, I would like metaphorically roll my eyes and be like, no, it isn't that serious, because it kind of like never really was. They only show up in few places in the books, and their impact is very like limited. However, season 2 takes the concept of the fatal flaws and makes them like an active problem. This is something that these characters have to face every fucking episode. They are here every episode. In the lesser degree or a bigger degree, they are always there. Percy gives up the fleece. He prioritizes saving Annabeth twice. He cannot stand her getting abandoned, but he also feels so hurt when she betrays him in episode 2. In episode 5, he says to Annabeth that he would let Olympus burn down for her. His loyalty has consequences, and we actually get to see that. And his flaw actively causes him to make mistakes that actually hinder the quest. And then you get to Annabeth and her pride, but also the added need for appreciation and love, which we see hidden underneath that pride. That makes me think of many parallels between specifically Annabeth and Clarice. I think in that way they are kind of similar characters. That is something to think about. The flaws of Annabeth actually show up so much in the show when compared to the books. We talk about her hubris around the siren scene in the books, but does it ever come up again? I actually don't think so. The fatal flaws in the show are like turned up to 11. It's like the characters have to do active parkour in order to avoid them, and the fatal flaws always manage to somehow trip them up. It's effective character writing. Another change, okay, this one is Polyphemus. Him not being dumb is such a small change, yet such a significant one, and I'm here for it. That makes him so much more of a threat, and the fact that he immediately is able to see through Grover's lie, but plays along with it, crazy twist. I think it changes nothing in the way that he's defeated, because he still has trauma from Odysseus. Also, he is still defeated in a fight by Tyson. But he's not just like some big monster whose only real strength is, his strength. I love this version of Polyphemus. I think it's so much more effective as a villain. Annabeth's invisibility cap is up next. This one has me worried, but also intrigued, because it has to have payoff, right? It didn't have it this season, but I'm assuming it's going to have one in season 3. Like we're not just going to forget about it, right? Right? I know them losing the cap at Luke's ship is kind of a weird choice, really, but I know maybe in the context of some of the future episodes in season 3 or season 4, it's gonna make more sense. I'm hoping for that. The second to last change I want to talk about is Annabeth knowing about the possibility of saving Thalia. This is a very interesting choice because she learns that the fleece can bring Thalia back through a dream and also tells that information to Luke, who as a result is very conflicted. But also it's such a good scheme on Kronos' part because now he gets 2 demigods that can possibly fulfill the great prophecy. Not one. If he cannot control Percy, he might be able to control Thalia, especially with her past. So technically, this is a Kronos playing 3D chess kind of move. But also the fact that Annabeth tells Grover and Percy about that, and Percy immediately has doubts and is wary of Thalia because he had that dream. I have a feeling that Percy and Thalia in season 3 are not just going to be like slightly not friendly with each other. That relationship is going to be so much more turbulent than it ever was in the books. They are going to be throwing nuclear bombs at each other. I can tell. And I mean, speaking of Thalia, that is probably the most important change made in the show. And holy shit, am I in love with it. First of all, her being turned into that tree by her father because she disobeys and refuses to be his pawn, his champion of the prophecy, but then Zeus allows her to be freed because he doesn't want the kid of Poseidon to be the champion of the prophecy. I'm sorry. Zeus sucks. And like, I know, we all know that Zeus is a horrible person. If you've read the books, you know that. Zeus sucks ass. But also, that would be my villain origin story. Like, genuinely, imagine meeting your dad for the first time and he turns you into a tree because you're like, fuck you. You were never involved in my life and now you want me to fight some fucking war for you? Get fucked. And he's like, you're gonna be a tree. But also, this makes for such more interesting conflict in the coming seasons too, because it shows us so well that the gods are way more similar to the Titans that they want you to know. Zeus behaves like his father. He literally does behave like his father. Remember what Kronos did to his 6 children. Well, 5 children. He thought that he ate Zeus, but then Zeus freed everybody and they killed him. Isn't that literally the same behavior? Because to me, it kind of is. But also, I think this is going to make for so much more interesting storytelling in season 3 specifically. Because think about the Titan's curse. Spoiler alert here. Luke has a conversation with Thalia about the gods. And imagine how insane it's going to be to see Thalia in that conversation, knowing what her father did to her. She has all of the motivations to be on Kronos' side, yet she doesn't choose him. That's gonna hit even harder, and it's gonna make all of the excuses of Luke and his motivation seem like bullshit excuses, and like he is actually in the wrong. Because look at this person. She suffered so much more from the gods than he ever did. His one problem with the gods is what they did to his mother, because she went kind of crazy, and the fact that Hermes ignored him. Meanwhile, you have Thalia being turned into a tree for years because her father was like, you're being rude, young lady. Fuck you. I'm sorry, like Luke's excuses are a little bit like, okay, now you sound kind of crazy. Watching her deal with all of that in season 3 is going to be crazy because that is trauma for life. I also love the immediate like suspicion and distrust that Percy feels towards her. Like he is actually so wary of her, and I understand why. Like it all makes so much sense, and it's gonna make for insane conflicts in season 3. And specifically, not getting a Percabeth hug in the final, but getting one for Thalia and Annabeth. It's gonna feel like Annabeth is sort of like the mediator between Thalia and Percy. But what happens when she's gone? If she's not there, they will just start trying to kill each other. The changes to the story are for the most part very effective and make me so much more excited for what the future has for the show. However, these changes were also very controversial for a lot of people. And I think this is where we need to start talking about the reception of the season and the changes to the story, because a lot of people didn't like them. I think it's finally time to talk about book purism when it comes to Percy Jackson and what I really think about it. A lot of people adapted the book purist mindset, and it was interesting to watch, to say the least. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so there's some education that needs to be done. I can see that.
In a way, book purism is very understandable, in my opinion. It comes from a place of appreciation for the piece of work that is getting adapted. And I mean, listen, we Percy Jackson fans can get very protective over Riordanverse adaptations. Very, very protective. Just look at the reception of the films and how most of the fandom absolutely despises them. But also, book purism partially works on pretty unrealistic expectations and assumptions about adaptations, which make the takes of book purists, let's just say, hard to resonate with. First of all, you have to think about the practical standpoint of these adaptations. You cannot make something word for word just like the books. The way making a televised adaptation works, you cannot make literally the exact same thing as the source material. It is literally impossible. A lot of things in the books are harder to make in real life. You can write any action sequence in the book, but is it going to be transferable onto real life, onto TV? It might not be. There is a massive difference of medium between the book and the TV show. In the books, the only thing that limits you is your imagination, your creativity. Meanwhile, when you're making a TV show, that's kind of not the case. Think of, for example, the Hydra scene. Like, it's way easier to just cut it than work so hard on it with choreography and CGI and camera angles and how we even frame that creature on our screen, when you can just cut the scene, especially when it's like not that crucial to the story. Also, specifically, the Percy Jackson show has this problem, and that is the runtime of the episodes. Some things that are necessary for the plot do get cut for timing so that we have more time to focus on actually important stuff. That really shows in season 2. I think season 1 had less of a problem with that. But from this perspective of the writers, the producers, I get it. Some things just have to be cut. You also have to take a look at this from the angle of updating the source material. Respectfully, why would I want to see the story of the Sea of Monsters book adapted 1-to-1 with 0 changes? This book is 20 years old. It came out in 2006. I was 1 year old when this book came out. I'm 21 now by the time you're watching this video, because it is my birthday. Hey! I'm turning into a 21-year-old twink. I think. I don't know. Am I? I don't know. I've been described as one. I don't really know if I... Whatever. It did age well. I do think it aged well, but not fully. There are some things in it that, in hindsight, when you look at it from the perspective of time, don't really feel that smart. And this is something that Rick Riordan is specifically doing with the show, and he said it himself. He is taking the source material of the books and he's writing it the way that he would write it now. He's updating the source material. He's taking this story and making it more fresh, but also molding it to fit more with the TV show format. I don't know about you, but I personally enjoy new takes on stories like these because personally, I enjoy being entertained. If I was sitting down every week to just watch a new episode of Percy Jackson, and every episode would be exactly like that specific part of the book that it's adapting, listen, it still would be fun because I would still be seeing, the stories from the book adapted onto my screen, but I don't think it would be nearly as exciting as the show is now. All of the changes and new character arcs, new plot points, that makes it so much more exciting. I'm sitting down every week to watch a new episode in which I know mostly what's going to happen, but also I don't know how it's going to happen. And it's very, very exciting. There's always a room for a surprise, a smaller or a bigger change to the story, to the plot, to the characters, to a set design, anything that is going to potentially have impact on the story. It's exciting to see a story you know so well get adapted, but also get updated and gain new angles. And that is so exciting to me because every single week I get to sit down, watch a new episode, and be like actually surprised and excited because of a Riordanverse story that I've known for years. And I mean, especially when the show does the storytelling and character sketching so much better than the books did. I'm sorry, I do think that the show is better. Quote me on that. Quote me on that all you want. And I mean, I do think that it's kind of a divisive opinion to have. As if the fandom isn't already divided. I think book purism is meant to be targeted at the show and the showrunners, but effectively, it doesn't really affect them as much as the rest of the fandom. Book purists are, to put it lightly, sometimes a bit of a pain in the ass. The fact that someone enjoys the show, which isn't 100% faithful to the source material, it still is faithful for the most part though, is such a grave offense to them, and I do not understand that mindset like at all. Why is it a bad thing that someone enjoys the show? Like genuinely, why? Name one reason. It just makes me so confused as to why that's such a pressing issue for so many people. Ultimately, book purists can be harmful. I was scouring the internet for this video, and I came across this post on the Reddit in the r/Netflix Witcher by a user named Fictional Apologist, which said the following things. The post is titled, "Book Purists Are Hurting the Experience for New Fans." I came to the Witcher fandom for the show first, and I loved it. I then got into the books and have been working through them for the last couple of years. Well, I realized some big changes have been made. Plot-wise, I'm able to separate the different mediums and enjoy them for what they are. If anything, reading the books after seeing the show made me appreciate them more. I don't know about anyone else here, but I come onto this subreddit to interact with the fandom and have some fun with mild speculation. But almost every single post I come across gets dragged down by fans of the books who are very opposed to the show for its changes. I've actually had better experiences with the game fans. Now I'm also part of the whatever this fandom name is, so I'm not familiar with differing opinions and preferences, but not such on a such vocal scale as this. I'm not asking these people to pipe down because that's wrong and unfair. I'm not asking them to change their minds either because that's also unfair. I simply wish that they could consider what it looks like for those of us who just want to connect about something we collectively enjoy without loud opposition making it feel like we're wrong to love the show for what it is and not as a straight adaptation. That feels like gatekeeping to me, and it makes me not want to be involved at all or even voice my enjoyment in real life offline. I kind of agree with everything that this person said in this post. Personally, I did not love The Witcher show done by Netflix, was not a fan, but I also didn't engage with it that much. I do, however, remember a lot of conversations around how faithful it is to the source material or even about the races of certain characters and how in the books, all of these characters are white, which, that sure does ring a bell when it comes to Percy Jackson, doesn't it? I'm sorry, one thing I will never support when it comes to book purism is the idea that political correctness is ruining these adaptations. This is a take I see often when a character in a show, a film, an adaptation basically, gets cast and they are, for example, of a different skin color than in the source material. Suddenly it's this woke agenda, political correctness, how dare they? And then you get the biblically accurate Annabeth Chase TikToks or basically just casual racism on the main. I have seen only a few people talk about these sort of changes who did not sound like they were racist. That is a very, very rare thing. Or for other examples of this awful political correctness, let's think of for example, the Hobbit films. They dared to include a woman in that story. How could have they done that? How dare they? That is so disrespectful to the source material. Every show now has to have a gay character, a black character, and it's disrespectful to the source material. This is not the story I grew up with. I want them white, all men, straight. By the way, this was all satire. I am not saying this seriously. And I hope you realize that, right? Right? Suddenly book purism and knowing the source material becomes some sort of pass for you to be racist and a lot of times also misogynistic and homophobic. No, it's not an excuse to be stupid and be a horrible fucking person. No, it isn't. I think being a book purist almost unlocks a level of ego in some of these people that makes them feel like they are superior to the newer fans who come into the fandom because of the show, or even older fans who still happen to enjoy the show. This user on Twitter named Cal said this about book purists. Book purism is probably the laziest and dumbest form of engagement with any film, TV show, yet somehow every book purist is convinced they are intellectually superior and immediately correct because they have the coveted rare gift of knowing how to read. Not to be mean to those people, but a lot of the times when I see them online, this is exactly how I see them. Good, great, you've read the books, you know them. Happy for you. Doesn't mean you have this moral high ground over the other fans though. A lot of the times the way these people talk reminds me of the actually memes. It's giving that. That is ruining the enjoyment for other fans for no reason and also making you seem annoying or like you have a very, very inflated ego. It's fair to have criticism towards the show. I definitely have some, and I had more in season 1 than I do now, but still, I think criticism is important. If you truly love a piece of media, you should be able to critique it. That's just kind of like one of the most basic beliefs that I personally hold. Criticism is how the show grew into what it is now. So many things have been fixed in season 2 that were a problem earlier. It's one thing though to be critical of the show, and another to be actively rude to other folks for enjoying it, or even creators and people involved with the show, because I know the story they're telling isn't the story that you grew up with. Like, for example, people sending like racist messages to Leah Savage-Jeffries because she dares to portray Annabeth. Like, girl, these people sometimes get like actively stupid, because why are we now saying that, for example, the Percy Jackson films are better and like in quality and more faithful to the source material than the show? The films, like I'm sorry, can we just be for real for a second? Comparing these films to the show is like the literal definition of like Coughing Baby versus Nitrogen Bomb. And I'm gonna give you a chance to guess which is which in this case. And I do find it funny that book purists of all people have the nerve to say that the films were better than the show, when the films like actively denied the vision of the world that the author had, Mr. Rick Riordan, and he also denounced them. He said he had nothing to do with them and that they were an abomination. And you're online praising them? Not very book purist of you, but I don't know. So like, do we actually enjoy Rick Riordan's work, or do we not? Like, which one is it? Decide. That is an opinion that I will never hear anyone out. I'm sorry, these movies sucked ass. They are so horrible in every way, shape, or form. I don't think there's any good thing that came out of them. Anything. That's one of the reasons why I'm like very excited for season 3 specifically, because finally the film comparisons at least are going to end, because the films never made it to book 3 because they just decided to jump the story and have Kronos be defeated in book 2. Girl. I think all of that really comes from the fact that the showrunners clearly have their own opinions of the changes and they think they are necessary. Therefore, I don't think they're that likely to listen to criticism in regards to said changes. And that makes the people who identify as book purists feel frustrated and like powerless. So they have no other foil to like voice that frustration. So they take it out on the fans. And then you encounter, a video of someone talking about how fun the new episode of Percy Jackson was. And these people decide that it's a good idea to comment to this person's comment section and be like, oh my God, you're so stupid for enjoying this show. How dare you? Where is Rainbow? It sucks. Like, it's like borderline toxic. We can talk about where it comes from, of course, what the motivation is, but it doesn't take away from the fact that book purism oftentimes leads to unnecessary rudeness towards other people in fandom spaces and almost like elitist feels of the fandom. The atmosphere gets ruined, people are mad, and the show just continues. Nothing changes really, aside from the fact that more people are now pissed and less likely to share their opinions online because they don't want to get jumped in the comments. So is book purism a good thing? Absolutely not. Definitely not. However, I do also think that we do kind of have to take a look at it from a different perspective. It can be a good thing. However, it all comes down to execution and the source material we are talking about, as well as the behavior of the fandom. I think most Percy Jackson fans have at one point identified as book purists because of the films. They felt like an insult to us because they took what we loved before and made it into a fucking joke. They were not good. And a lot of the people who are now saying that they were better than the show, I'm sure they didn't feel the same way when these films actually came out. It is absolutely understandable to feel protective over the stories that you've loved, you've cherished probably for a very, very long time. I completely understand that, but I think loving these stories shouldn't involve like gatekeeping and also this conservative outlook on other things that come out of these stories. I think we should allow them to grow. I think we should allow them to reach new audiences, to get reinvented. It isn't easy at times to just let go of something and let it just develop on its own and feel like maybe it's not catering to you anymore. But I think understanding that and being able to handle that like an actual like adult would make for a much more pleasant experience for everybody in the fandom. Some criticism is of course needed, but let's make it around things that are like an actual problem for the show and not some weird fixating on details that eventually don't really matter. I think this is the last time we're going to be having this conversation in relation to Percy Jackson, because season 3 is coming out later this year. And from what we know from season 2, we can already tell that there's going to be a lot of different changes to the story of season 3. Some of them probably pretty minor, but I'm already sensing a lot of changes, specifically in the way that Thalia, Percy, and Luke interact in that season. And potentially, there's going to be a lot of changes to Artemis and Zoe and how the Hunters of Artemis work. So I think we're going to be talking about this again, probably next year when season 3 comes to an end, because I can already sense that these people are going to be complaining again. But I think I just wanted to take this time in this video to just like get some things off my chest, tell you how I feel, maybe start some conversations in the comments as well. And I don't know, hopefully it made sense. Now, though, I do kind of want to get off my soapbox a little bit and start talking very quickly, very briefly, because I don't really have that much to say about this. I want to talk about the future of Percy Jackson and where I think season 3 is heading.
I'm not going to that wedding. Obviously not. It's obnoxious and it's nasty.
I'm kind of convinced that season 3 is going to be like an insane event. Season 1 was good. Season 2 was epic. Season 3 is going to change lives. They left so much open for that season, specifically around Thalia. Like, it has to work. These writers have been playing with fire and winning actively, especially in season 2, and I think they can land this plane. I would trust these writers with a loaded gun. And with how these characters are getting redefined as the show goes on, I'm just thinking about what the hell they could possibly be doing to characters like Nico, Bianca, and Zoe. I feel like my small little brain sponge is not even able to fully comprehend what is currently going on inside of that writer's room and the like evil twisted shit that they're coming up specifically around these 3 people. Specifically, Nico and Bianca are the ones that I'm very, very excited about. And Nico is one of the best characters in Percy Jackson just in general, but I feel like we're gonna see so much just like evil, traumatic shit around them that is going to be like, I know I'm going to be crying a lot when season 3 comes out. However, I do have one main criticism of the show that I hope season 3 fixes. We need longer episodes. I'm sorry, these 35-minute episodes are not gonna cut it for season 3. It would help out to flesh out some of the characters. It would give us more time with them. It would allow the writers to possibly incorporate more elements from the books. Season 2, in my opinion, can have shorter episodes because the book it's adapting is very, very short. I think it's actually the shortest out of the original 5. So like, that isn't really that big of a problem. But season 3, I'm sorry, we cannot be doing 30-minute episodes for season 3. That's just going to be disrespectful, actually. If I see a single episode next season that is below 45 minutes, I will be sending a strongly worded email to the showrunners, to Disney, to whoever is in charge of these runtimes. We need more time. We need more room for these stories to develop. This short episode shit isn't gonna work out in the long run. And dare I say, I think it could be detrimental to the show. But aside from that, I genuinely don't know what else they could improve on next season because so many improvements have already been made in season 2. Like, they genuinely listened to us. And I think that's so special. I think it's great to have creators involved with a show that actually listen to the audience. I hope that they get bigger budgets, bigger runtimes. I hope they get greenlit for season 4 and season 5 as well. Everything. And trust and believe, I will be seated right here watching these episodes and losing my mind every single time. And with that, I do want to end this video and I want to thank you so much for sticking around till the end. If you did, please let me know in the comments below what you thought of it and what you thought of the things that I discussed. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you're going to have a great day. Please remember to subscribe to the channel because if you like Percy Jackson content, there's more coming. As I said, next week, I'm going to be ranking every single Riordanverse book. That video is already mostly filmed. I haven't started editing it yet, but I think it's going to be a fun one. It's a more like less structured video. It's more so just me rambling about the books. I also used Bethany, my board, for the ranking, and it's also a lot of fun. If you like Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, that video is for you, and you're going to enjoy it. Also, my exams start next week for real. I have 4 exams, like the first week after I'm dropping this video. So please keep me in your prayers because that's gonna be a lot. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. A quick reminder, I have a Google Forms in the description box below where you can submit video ideas if you have anything that you would like to see me cover. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, great week. I will see you in a week's time on Saturday to rank all of the Riordanverse books. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Take care.